The Currency Exchange Market. Macro video lesson with Steve Reff and Eric Allmeroth. Hello students, today we're going to be studying the currency exchange market, which is going to be dealing with the relative value fluctuations of foreign currencies to each other and the value of the dollar. We're going to do this by setting up a fictional bank in the middle of the ocean, which is hypothetical, as a way of considering this, to think about it so we can more easily understand how this currency exchange market works.
If you notice on these graphs, we have the graph to the left, which is the dollar market by people who live inside the United States. Then we're going to pretend as if there's a currency exchange market out in the middle of the ocean. And then off to the right is what happens to the value of foreign currency. And then farther to the right, you already have seen this many times, is the aggregate supply, aggregate demand graph. And when this currency exchange market is happening out in the middle of the ocean, what is the reason for price of currency to change throughout the day, throughout each week, throughout each month, throughout each year? Why do currencies fluctuate?
It's going to take us back to the laws of supply and demand as they relate to various currencies and our own.
Let's take a look at the reasons for the changes in the relative prices and the relative fluctuations among these different currencies of the world. And like Eric said, we're going to look at dollars and other foreign currency. For instance, if you wanted to buy something in France, which uses the euro as their currency, what would you have to do?
Well, first of all, I would have to figure out the price of what I'm going to buy in euros, and then I would have to figure out a way of getting my hands on some of those euros. The only way to do that is to exchange the dollars in my pocket for the euros those markets are using.
So if that were to happen, and you wanted to exchange your euros in this currency exchange market, which curve is affected for the dollar then?
If I take my dollars to that bank and turn them into the currency market, that's going to increase the supply of dollars into that currency exchange market.
Okay, so you're telling me the supply of dollars going into this currency exchange market would cause the dollar to depreciate relative to what's happening to the euro at this point in time.
That's correct, because that ER over there stands for exchange rate. And if that exchange rate decreases, we are definitely going to see a depreciation of that dollar relative to the euro. It goes back to scarcity again. As things become scarcer, value increases. And in this case, as things become more abundant in that market, the value of it is going to decrease.
And so now these dollars are exchanged in this currency market. And what do those dollars buy up?
Those dollars, since I'm going to be shopping in France, are going to be buying euros, which is the main currency in Europe.
So you're telling me then the demand for euros in this currency exchange market has increased.
The increasing dollars in the currency market increased because they bought up euros in that currency market, which increased the demand for euros in that currency market.
And that caused the euro to appreciate relative to the dollar.
I like the way you pronounce that, appreciate. Yes, as in appreciate.
Oh, that's a good one. So as you can tell, in this currency market happening every single millisecond of the day, currency is being traded in this market. We're going to go ahead and reset the graphs here. And we're going to look at the reasons for the change in the price of currency. Now, one of them is preferences in purchasing goods and services. In the example that we just gave you, Eric wanted to buy something in Europe, so he supplied this exchange market with dollars. Those dollars then bought up the euros. The dollar depreciated relative to the euro, and the euro appreciated relative to the dollar. But now, underneath this topic, there's three subtopics, and we're going to start with the first one. Let's say that there's a change in the relative price level of the United States. We'll say that aggregate demand shifts to the left, which causes either an output or a recessionary gap. But as you notice, the price level has gone down, making our goods less expensive to foreigners. So Eric, what do you think would happen in the foreign currency exchange market for buying U.S. goods?
The supply of euros is going to increase in that market. Whenever American goods become cheaper relative to someone else's currency, they're going to want to buy more goods in that market where the value of the currency is decreased. So the explanation in the currency market is first, euros are going to increase in supply.
So what's going to happen, Europe will want to buy more U.S. goods because our price level now is lower than their price level. And so they will then go ahead and supply euros to this currency exchange market because those euros are going to buy up what?
Dollars, so they can buy up those cheaper goods in America now.
So now what's happened is this, that the euro has depreciated relative to the dollar and the dollar has appreciated relative to the euro. Looking at this, would this be a true statement for most anything that if you could figure out one of these, for instance, the supply of euros shifting to the right, then you know in the other market for the currency, in this situation, dollars, the opposite curve will shift, but it will shift in the same direction. So let's go to B and C because both of those are similar. Let me go ahead and refresh the graphs. And now let's do this. Let's say the U.S. economy is currently in an output or recessionary gap and aggregate demand keeps increasing. Now we're going to take the price level out of this. We're only going to be concerned about real GDP and the national income effect is greater than the price level effect. Keep an eye on the x-axis here. We're currently in a recession or output gap. The economy starts to pick up. It starts shifting to the right and we get to full employment. What's going to happen now in the dollar market or in the foreign currency market? You pick one.
So as aggregate demand increases in our U.S. economy, that gives more spending power to consumers, so they will increase their demand for both domestic and foreign goods. And therefore, as the aggregate demand pulls us back to full employment, that means national income and real GDP will increase, increasing the spending power of people in our economy, and that will cause Americans to supply more dollars into the currency exchange market to buy up foreign currency so they can buy their foreign products.
So demand then is going to increase for foreign currency as United States citizens want to buy more domestic, but more importantly, in this case, foreign products. They go through the currency exchange market. So they supply the currency exchange market with dollars. Those dollars buy up foreign currency, driving the value of foreign currency up or appreciating relative to what's happened to the US dollar market, which is depreciating relative to the foreign currency market.
The reasons for changes in the price of currency, the first one is preferences to purchase goods and services. Just like we learned back in the product market, the second factor that changes demand is consumer preferences. As American consumers change their preferences for foreign goods, that's going to change their demand for foreign currency in the currency market. So in review, the first reason for changes in the price of currency is, number one, preferences to purchase goods and services for three reasons. A change in the relative price level of a country. B, a change in the relative real GDP of a country. And C, change in the relative national income of a country.
Now that we've looked at the preferences depending on the price level, real GDP, and national income, we're going to go to the second reason for changes in the price of currency, and that is a safe haven to place your money. There aren't many countries in this world that it's a safe place to put your money. Would you agree with me there, Eric?
I've always been big on a brick under the fireplace or under the bed's good.
Yeah, I don't want to put my money into a country that might have a dictatorship that all of a sudden I put my money in there and then I have no principal money or interest on my investment. If foreigners think the U.S. is a safe place to put their money, unrelated to the price level, unrelated to interest rates or so forth, they just know it's a safe place to put put their money. What do you think's first going to happen in this foreign currency market in relation to exchanging their currency for dollars?
Well, I think the supply of foreign currency is going to increase.
And when that happens, their currency depreciates relative to the dollar. And when they supply their currency in this currency exchange bank, what's their currency buying up?
They're going to buy up any currency they feel is safer, and which in this case will be dollars.
And so what's going to happen to the market for the dollar?
Well, then the demand for U.S. dollars is going to increase.
Good. So we say that the dollar now has done what?
The dollar appreciates relative to the foreign currency.
Does that mean the dollar has gotten stronger or weaker relative to the other currency?
It means it got stronger.
And people think a strong dollar is good. Is a strong dollar good?
Well, like most things, it can be good, it can be bad. A strong dollar is basically good, but there's a downside to that because now our American goods are not as appealing to foreign markets because the price of those goods has increased.
So does this mean as the price of our exports go up, foreigners will purchase fewer of our exports?
That's exactly what that means, Reff.
So in this situation, you described this perfectly about a stronger dollar, but now you're telling me exports are going to go down because they cost more to foreigners because of the value of the dollar. And as exports go down, we know that there's a decrease in exports. Aggregate demand is going to decrease, causing some sort of output gap. So a stronger dollar, like you said earlier, it depends. Is that good or bad? It depends. In this situation that we're looking at, it causes an output gap when we were at full employment. I think this is number one when foreigners are looking to put their money somewhere. It beats out interest rates. It beats out a lot of things. People want to make sure that their principal, the original amount they put into another country, is going to be safe. So another reason for a change in the price of currency is the relative real interest rate in one country relative to the other country. Let's say we're looking at the US dollar and the foreign currency, let's say it's the peso. And we'll say that Mexico is a safe place to put your money. And sure enough, you can get a better real interest rate on your savings in Mexico relative to the US. What do you think is going to happen in the currency market here for the dollar and the peso?
Many people holding on to dollars and other foreign currencies are going to want to invest in pesos. So in order to do that in the currency market, they're going to have to supply dollars into the exchange market to buy up pesos in Mexico.
So looking at the graph, Eric, did I draw that correctly then?
Yes, that is going to increase the supply of dollars in the currency exchange market, and it's going to increase the demand for pesos in the currency exchange market.
So now that the value of the dollar has decreased relative to the peso, the value of the peso has appreciated relative to the dollar. Does that mean the dollar has gotten weaker and the peso has gotten stronger?
It does. It means the exchange rate for the dollar has decreased and the exchange rate for the peso has increased.
As the dollar has depreciated relative to the peso, our goods now have become less expensive in relative terms. Will that change aggregate demand then down the road?
Yes, as equilibrium balances out now, aggregate demand will then increase.
For what reason?
Value of the American dollar has decreased. Therefore, our price of goods is decreasing. That's going to increase our export trade as foreigners buy more of our goods with their higher value currency.
Now, all of this because of people wanting to invest into Mexico to get a better real return on their investment has now caused an inflationary gap in the U.S. So is a weak dollar always good? And the answer, Eric, is what?
It depends.
The fourth reason for changes in the price of currency is large public sector borrowing. Now, why would large public sector borrowing cause a change in the currency exchange market.
Large public sector borrowing will often occur when there's a recessionary gap. If it was an inflationary gap and we're operating beyond full employment, the motivation for government borrowing is diminished. The government might choose to borrow to apply a demand-side approach to get us back to equilibrium. As aggregate demand then increases, that's going to cause the price level to increase. And as the price level increases, that's going to make the demand for goods in our American market less effective to attract foreign investment. As the demand for the dollar decreases, that is going to cause the supply of foreign currency in the currency market to decrease.
Because fewer foreigners will want to purchase U.S. dollars. That's why the demand for dollars decreased. And so the foreign currency market, those currencies will appreciate relative to the dollar. Now, is that good for America looking at aggregate demand down the road?
Yes. As the exchange rate of the dollar decreases, that's going to increase export trade as foreign markets turn to us to buy our depreciated products, which is going to increase aggregate demand for American goods.
And congratulations, we are now in an inflationary gap.
Yes.
Okay, good. I hope everybody's getting a little bit of a hang of this, because we're getting to the fifth reason for changes in the price of currency is when governments try to manipulate their currency. Let's look at the dollar market and the foreign currency market. Let's look at the yuan, which is a Chinese currency. And let's say China is having problems because their currency is rising in value, and they don't want that to happen because they're an exporting country. What they'll do then is go to the currency exchange market and buy up dollars, take their currency, supply it to the currency exchange market, this bank fictitiously out in the middle of the ocean, and their currency buys up dollars, driving the price of our currency up relative to their currency so they can export more of their product as their currency depreciated relative to the dollar. This is when the government gets into this currency exchange market and starts to manipulate the currencies so they can do better in their export market.
But next time you're in an airport and you see all of the different booths for exchanging currency as you go to various countries, we hope you will now understand what the root of this is all about, how it relates to export trade, to aggregate demand and supply, and the economies of various countries. The Currency Exchange Market video lesson, the end.